Emergence from Shadows. Chapter 1. Awakening in Twilight. The exiles' church stood solemnly at dusk, its weathered stones absorbing the echoes of desperate prayers. Shadows flickered along the cracked walls as candle flames fought to remain lit, casting ghostly silhouettes of the lost. Jasper Caldwell occupied a pew, the rough wood digging into his palms, anchoring him amidst a storm of memories. Outside chaos spiraled out of control, while within these walls a fragile hope lingered, a beacon for the forsaken. It should have felt like refuge, yet an unsettling weight settled in his chest, a reminder that even in this sacred space he faded into the background. The flickering candles struggled in the dimness, each sputter resonating with a moment he'd do anything to forget. The tragedy replayed in his mind, the screams, the chaos, the faces of those he couldn't protect. A shiver ran down his spine, and he straightened, knuckles white against the pew. Was this what it meant to be invisible, to watch the world unravel while feeling helpless? He inhaled the scent of incense, the sweet bitterness filling his lungs, but it did little to ease the gnawing in his gut. "I just want a damn reason to keep pushing through this mess," he muttered under his breath. Doubt coiled tightly around his mind with every passing second. Always the quiet one, the observer, but now as whispers of a contagion swept through the community. Silence felt like complicity. He opened his mouth, but the revelation lodged in his throat. Footsteps echoed in the empty nave, a reminder of the living world beyond his sanctuary. Jasper's pulse raced. Cyrus, always Cyrus, the man commanded attention effortlessly, his very presence sparking action. Just yesterday, he'd stood before a gathering, rallying the community with fervor. Jasper had watched, lurking in the shadows, yearning to be seen yet terrified of scrutiny. "What do you expect me to do here? My words don't mean a damn thing to them," Cyrus snapped, his tone cold and clipped, dismissing any notion of weakness. Jasper clenched his fists, nails biting into his palms. The weight of invisibility pressed down on him like a thick fog. He longed to rise, to declare his thought, to be part of the change, yet fear loomed like a spectre. What if he stood and spoke, and no one listened? The thought gripped him tighter. He traced the lines of the pew with his fingers, searching for answers in the worn wood, but finding only echoes of his own uncertainty. Exhaling slowly, he released the tension coiling within. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, stretching like the uncertainty inside him. Glancing toward the heavy oak doors, he faced a choice: remain silent, a forgotten soul among countless others, or embrace his fear and let it propel him forward. Morning light spilled over the square of echoes, illuminating the anxious faces gathered in the town center. Jasper Caldwell stepped onto the makeshift podium, a quickened pulse racing through him. He had only days to rally the community, to pull them from the abyss of despair wrought by the recent tragedy. The urgency suffocated him. If he failed to unravel the mystery of the contagion that had swept through their town, the consequences would become an irreversible fate. He took a deep breath, the heavy grief surrounding him, and began to speak, hoping his voice would unite them in their moment of need. "We gotta stick together, folks. Ain't no way we're letting this tear us apart." Jasper's voice rang out, trembling yet determined. He scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces, but found only uncertainty and fear. "Together we can demand justice, we can hold those responsible accountable." But before he could build momentum, a sharp voice sliced through the air, cold and unyielding. "Cyrus, justice, spare me the sentimentality. It's a fairy tale for the fools here." Cyrus stepped forward, a smirk painting his features as he leaned against the podium. The crowd shifted, whispers of doubt rippling like a wave. The ground beneath him shifted, and he felt his grip on their attention slipping. They had less than a week before they became what they feared, losing their identities in a corrupt system. "Cyrus, this isn't just about me." Jasper's voice strained against the growing tide of dissent. "We have 3 days left to find the truth before it becomes too late." But Cyrus merely laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the square. "3 days? You're just a boy playing at leadership. What do you know about fighting the system?" The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, their faith in Jasper faltering. Panic surged in his chest, tightening like a vice. Could he really lead them against the tide of fear? Every second wasted was a reminder that their time was slipping away. Jasper's voice wavered, desperation clawing at him. "I know enough to see things for what they are. We can't let them silence us." He pointed to the horizon,
where the sun hung like a warning. We have to act before the week ends. If we don't, we'll lose ourselves in this madness. But Cyrus stepped closer, his presence a fragile flame struggling against the wind. And what exactly will your action bring? More pain, more confusion. You're not ready for this fight, Jasper. The crowd was now divided, some swayed by Cyrus's words, others still holding on to Jasper's flickering hope. The tension thickened like fog, each heartbeat a countdown to disaster. Jasper stood alone, a fragile flame struggling.
The square of echoes pulsed with restless energy, a cacophony of voices rising and falling like the tide. Jasper Caldwell stood at the center, his heart thudded against his ribcage, the weight of a fractured community pressing down on him. This was his moment to rally them, to reclaim their voice against Cyrus's manipulative grip. If he didn't act now, if he didn't unravel the emerging contagion of fear and doubt before the week ended, he would lose not just their trust, but his own identity. He inhaled sharply, desperation fueling his resolve as time slipped away. The relentless passage echoed in his mind as he prepared to speak, to ignite a spark of hope in the crowd. Shadows danced around him, the dim light of flickering torches casting an unsettling ambiance that mirrored the tension in the air. Jasper raised his hand, a signal for silence, but the crowd swirled with discontent. "Y'all listen here. We gotta come together against Cyrus, or we'll drown in this mess." His voice trembled, yet he pushed through, desperation clawing at his throat. Whispers of doubt fluttered through the air. Just then, Cyrus stepped forward, his presence commanding, a sneer plastered across his face. "Oh, please, don't let him manipulate you. Jasper's only in it for himself." The crowd fell silent in uncertainty. A knot twisted in Jasper's stomach. The stakes had never felt higher. If he didn't regain their trust now, they'd be lost forever, and he'd become exactly what he feared. Powerless. With each of Cyrus's smooth words, Jasper's determination wavered. "You think he cares about you?" Cyrus continued, his voice a silken thread weaving doubt. "He wants to use you, to cast you aside once he's finished." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, skepticism morphing into hostility. Jasper's throat tightened. He struggled to breathe as the air felt thick and stifling around him. Panic clawed at the edges of his mind. 3 hours until the meeting with the council. 3 hours to shift their hearts and minds. Each tick of the clock echoed in his ears, drowning out his own thoughts. He had to act, but how? Jasper stepped forward, desperation spilling into his voice. "Please, you have to believe in what we can achieve together. I'm not your enemy." But the crowd shifted, shoulders squared against him. Their faces were a mixture of anger and confusion, and he felt the ground beneath him shifting. The clock was ticking, and he had only hours before the community cemented their distrust. If he didn't unify them now, he would face the consequences alone, stripped of everything he believed in. His pulse pounded in his ears as he prepared for the worst. Would he fight harder, or flee and abandon the identity he had fought to defend? The tension snapped, and the crowd surged forward, voices rising in a cacophony of Dusk draped the exiles' church in a shroud of twilight, the last rays of sunlight flickering through the colossal stained glass window like dying embers. Jasper knelt on the cracked stone floor, the chill of the earth pressed against him, grounding him in solitude. Flickering candles cast dancing shadows around him, illuminating the jagged edges of ancient stones that had witnessed countless struggles. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth mingling with wildflowers, a bittersweet reminder of life outside this sanctuary. The howling wind threaded through the church's crevices, carrying whispers of outcasts who had found refuge here, their stories swirling around him like a haunting melody, intertwining with the turbulence in his heart. Jasper breathed in deeply, the cool air filled his lungs, faintly sweet with wildflowers thriving among the decay. He glanced up at the stained glass window where slivers of light refracted into a kaleidoscope of colors, casting vibrant patterns on the ground. Each hue was a reminder of the hope he once felt, a hope that crumbled under Cyrus's accusations. The echoes of the square of echoes lingered in his mind like a relentless drumbeat, urging him to retreat into himself. Yet, as the candlelight flickered, an ember of resolve ignited within him, pushing back against the shadows. The wind outside wailed, a mournful sound that seemed to mock his uncertainty. It whistled through the cracks in the stone, wrapping around him like an unwelcome embrace. His heart thudded in his chest, drowning out the rest of the world as he struggled to silence the doubts creeping in. He pressed his palms against the cool surface of the altar,
the rough texture grounding him. Each rough stone under my fingers whispered tales of prayers and fears, strength born from all the mess we fought through. The church, both prison and sanctuary, held the weight of those who had come before him, each token of broken promise a testament to the battles fought. Jasper's gaze fell to the scattered shards of glimmering glass on the floor, remnants of shattered hopes gleaming in the dim light. They sparkled like stars fallen from the heavens, each a reminder of the fragility of trust. The whispers of the past curled around him, entwining with the present, a reminder that he wasn't alone. The air felt charged, heavy with potential, as if the very walls were urging him to rise above the chaos. With a deep breath he straightened, the cool air filling his lungs like a surge of courage. He could not let fear dictate his actions any longer today. He would confront Cyrus, reclaim his voice, and step into the light of his own worth. As he rose, the shadows retreated, swept away by the flickering candlelight. The church loomed around him, its ancient.
The square of echoes buzzed with electric tension as dusk descended, shadows stretching across the cracked stone plaza. Jasper Caldwell stood at the center, his heart hammered within his ribcage, heavy with the community's fears. Tonight he faced Cyrus, the man who had filled the power vacuum left by the leader's death. If he didn't act soon, chaos would settle into their ranks like a festering wound. Time was slipping away, and he had to assert his role as a protector of the people before it was too late. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, smoke, and the faint metallic tang of fear, amplifying his resolve to confront the growing unrest. Jasper's voice was strained as he approached Cyrus, who lounged against the fountain like a king surveying his court. "Cyrus, these folks are scared stiff. We can't let this slide. We gotta get this sorted right now." He hesitated, words tangled in his throat. The crowd murmured, their glances flickering with apprehension, but Cyrus merely chuckled, a low, mocking sound that sent a chill down Jasper's spine. "You think you can lead? Look around, Caldwell. They crave strength, not some mumbling idiot. You're just wasting breath here." The sunlight faded, ceding to twilight, yet the tension in the square thickened. Jasper's chest tightened with urgency as sweat pooled at the base of his neck. "If we don't act now, we risk losing everything." He stepped closer, defiance igniting within him, but Cyrus leaned forward, eyes narrowing, voice a low growl. "You think this is a game? You think you can just waltz in and demand respect? You'll never be one of them. You'll just become what you fear most, a pawn in someone else's game." A commotion rippled through the crowd, filled with frantic whispers about a looming threat. Jasper's heart lurched. This was the distraction he didn't need. He turned, scanning the crowd with wide, searching eyes as a figure stumbled into view, wild-eyed and shouting about danger lurking in the shadows. The murmurs crescendoed into chaos, drowning out Jasper's thoughts. He had only moments left to speak. If he didn't act now, everything he feared could come true. The crowd surged, panic igniting as whispers of danger spread like wildfire. Urgency crashed over Jasper in waves, pushing him to act. He had to make a choice, dive headfirst into the chaos and protect those he loved, or stand paralyzed, risking everything. "Cyrus!" he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice, but Cyrus only smirked, eyes glinting with dark amusement. Shadows closed in around him, and Jasper stepped back, his pulse racing as the crowd roared in protest. What lay ahead was uncertain, and one choice could seal their fate. He had to decide now. With the crowd on the brink of hysteria. Chapter 2. Fragments of Light. The exiles' church stood resolute on the edge of a jagged cliff, its ancient stones weathered by countless storms. As dusk descended, the colossal stained-glass window illuminated the interior with shards of vibrant color, casting fractured light onto the cracked stone floor. The air chilled, intensifying the urgency within him, thick with incense and damp earth, mingling with the whispers of the past, echoes of leaders lost and communities torn apart. Jasper Caldwell blinked against the fading light, fingers trembling as they traced the edges of crumbling documents scattered across the altar. Time slipped away, and the chaos of the world outside pressed against his thoughts like a tide. Earlier he had shouted for Cyrus, but the answer remained elusive, buried beneath layers of fear and deception. Alone in the church, resolve surged through him, invigorating yet suffocating. Jasper leaned closer to the parchment, fingers brushing against the faded ink. Names, dates, and patterns emerged like a sinister tapestry. The leader's death, too sudden, too convenient. A tight knot twisted in his gut. Each revelation pulsed with urgency.
The contagion hadn't just spread, it had been orchestrated by an insidious hand, twisting fate with deft precision. Heavy footsteps echoed through the sacred space, and he glanced up, instinctively tensing, gasping as the figure emerged from the shadows. Cyrus Morrigan stepped into the dim light, a spectre cast against flickering candles. His presence loomed like a shroud of menace wrapped in charisma. A glint in Cyrus's eyes sent adrenaline coursing through Jasper. "You should leave this place, Jasper," Cyrus said, his voice low and smooth, each word dripping with honeyed malice. "What you're digging into isn't just history, it's a warning." Jasper straightened, defiance igniting within him. He wouldn't be intimidated, not now. A warning or a cover-up? Jasper shot back, anger flaring. His fists clenched and his eyes narrowed as fury surged. "Folks are hurting, Cyrus. They deserve to hear the truth, plain and simple." A flicker of amusement crossed Cyrus's face, yet his eyes remained cold. "And what if that truth shatters them, drives them right to the edge?" The words hung in the air, heavy and threatening. Jasper hesitated, fists still clenched, refusing to retreat. Outside, the congregation stirred, echoes of their desperation, seeping through the stone walls, urging him to fight. Cyrus leaned closer, his breath hot against Jasper's cheek. "You're treading on dangerous ground. Turn away now, or you'll find yourself buried beneath the truth you seek." The threat crackled in the air, palpable and charged. Jasper's instinct screamed at him to flee, but he stood firm, the documents pressing against his chest. He couldn't abandon them, couldn't abandon.
Morning light spilled through the colossal stained glass window of the exiles' church, casting fragmented rainbows across the cracked stone floor. Each shard of color danced on the dusty surface, illuminating the remnants of forgotten prayers etched into the walls. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, mixed with a faint sweetness of wildflowers, a bittersweet reminder of hope in this sanctuary. Outside, the wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying the distant murmurs of outcasts, seeking refuge, their whispers merging into an eerie yet comforting melody. As Jasper stepped deeper into the shadows, the rough stone walls pressed in around him, amplifying the sensation of solitude within this sanctuary of secrets. With careful steps, Jasper's fingers brushed against the cool, crumbling stone, the texture gritty beneath his fingertips, a tactile reminder of the church's age and the secrets it held. The distant sounds of the wind wrestled with silence, as if the very walls leaned in to listen. Beneath the altar lay a hidden ledger, a treasure wrapped in dust and silence, its pages whispering of betrayal and darkness. As he knelt to retrieve it, the musty smell of old paper filled his lungs, mingling with the earthiness of the church, a potent reminder of decay. His heart raced as excitement flared within him as he opened the ledger, scanning the inked names that linked the contagion to the council members, each name a weighty promise of revelation. The creak of the church door shattered the quiet, jolting Jasper. He froze, his heart hammering in his chest as Cyrus stepped into the sanctuary, the flickering light casting eerie shapes across his face. Unspoken words hung in the air, tension vibrating between them. Cyrus's voice was low, a gravelly whisper that curled around Jasper like a noose. "You really think you're the hero here? It's just coincidence, a ledger filled with nonsense. Back off, Jasper, or I'll make you regret stepping foot in here." Jasper clenched the ledger tighter, the edges cutting into his palm as he met Cyrus's steely gaze. "This ain't just shadows, Cyrus. This is the real deal, and it's about damn time someone faced it head on." Cyrus stepped closer, his presence overwhelming as the wind outside picked up, howling through the cracks in the walls. The sound reverberated, warning them of the impending confrontation. "You think you're some kind of hero? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Leave this be, Jasper, or I'll make sure you regret it." Each word dripped with menace, and Jasper's resolve hardened, a fire igniting in his chest. He could feel the weight of the church pressing down, the history of lost souls urging him forward. "I won't be silenced, not now, not ever." Dusk settled over the exiles' church, where ancient stones absorbed the fading light of day. The massive stained glass window cast a kaleidoscope of colors across the rough-hewn stone floor, painting a scene of struggle and hope. Jasper leaned over a low table, the scent of roasted insects mingling with earthy tubers simmering in a communal pot. A cluster of outcasts shared their meager meal, wooden bowls clinking softly amidst their hushed conversations. The faded murals of vanished people on the walls seemed to watch him as he studied a tattered ledger,
hinting at a connection between the contagion and their former leader's death. Outside, a vendor's distant call for skewered fish drifted in, a stark reminder of the harsh world beyond these hallowed walls, yet the communal meal served as a ritual, offering a moment of unity amidst the gathering gloom. With a shaky breath, Jasper reached for a bowl, fingers brushing the rough surface. He poured himself a serving of fermented fruit drink, the tangy sweetness momentarily distracting him from the bitter reality ahead. Cyrus entered, and the tension in the room seemed to constrict like a tightening noose. Jasper straightened, recalling the warnings about Cyrus's cunning nature. He had to be careful, the man was known for exploiting weakness. Cyrus sauntered closer, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, his voice dripped with mockery. "Chasing shadows again, Caldwell. You think your little notes will unravel the truth. You'll end up just like the others, grasping at phantoms." The taunt twisted in Jasper's gut, and though respect urged him to remain calm, anger simmered beneath the surface. The revelations in the ledger were too vital to ignore, despite Cyrus's looming threat. Jasper met his gaze and offered a slight bow with a hand pressed to his heart, a gesture of respect though his heart burned with disdain. "This contagion ain't just some tall tale, it's a sickness that binds us together, like a noose tightening round our necks," Jasper replied, his voice steady. "What happened to our leader wasn't an accident, you know that as well as I do." He scanned the room, noting the wary faces of the others. A few exchanged uneasy glances, the taboo of discussing the contagion openly weighed heavily on their shoulders, but he pressed on. The spirits of the vanished stir at twilight, and were close to awakening their wrath by ignoring the truth. Cyrus's expression darkened, a flicker of fear crossing his face before arrogance took over. Cyrus stepped forward, invading Jasper's space, his eyes narrowing. "Know your place, Caldwell. This ain't your fight to meddle in." The challenge.
Dawn broke over the square of echoes, casting a pale light on the faces of those gathered, their expressions a mix of confusion and anticipation. Jasper Caldwell stood at the center, his chest tightened, each beat echoing in his ears. He had only days before the contagion would become an irreversible part of their lives. The truth about the leader's death and the conspiracy behind it clawed at him, demanding to be unearthed. A lump formed in his throat as he stepped forward. "Cyrus, it's time to come clean. We both know what's at stake." The words erupted from him, raw and desperate, drowning out the murmurs of the crowd as he fought against the tide of doubt threatening to engulf him. Cyrus, draped in shadows, turned slowly, a smirk curling his lips. The crowd parted slightly, his presence commanding. "Jasper Caldwell, the so-called hero," he drawled, his voice smooth and laced with mockery. "What do you honestly think you'll achieve? Your outburst is utterly pointless." Behind him, menacing murmurs rippled through the crowd, a sea of faces shifting from curiosity to hostility. Nausea twisted in Jasper's gut. He couldn't back down now. He took a breath, the air thick and acrid with tension, and stepped further into the light. "I'm here to expose the truth. The contagion is linked to your lies." Cyrus laughed, and a chill crept down Jasper's spine. The crowd shifted, a wave of uncertainty crashing against him. "You want the truth? Look at yourself. You're the real threat." He gestured dramatically, eyes glinting with malice. "This man is trying to sow chaos while our people suffer." Gasps and murmurs rose, a palpable wave of anger beginning to swell. Jasper's chest tightened further. Before the week ended, their lives would change forever. He needed to push through, to reclaim his voice. "You're lying, Cyrus, you know it!" The crowd surged, a chorus of shouts rising in the air, and Jasper felt the ground shift beneath him. Panic clawed at his chest as he lost control of the narrative. A few brave souls stepped back, but most leaned into the frenzy. "You'll regret this!" Cyrus hissed, stepping closer, eyes narrowed. The intensity of their stares pressed down on him, fear and aggression swirling like a storm. This was no longer just a confrontation, it was a battle for his identity. He had to act. "Listen, the contagion is a symptom of a greater evil," he shouted, but the words fell flat against the rising tide of hostility. Adrenaline surged through him, cutting through the chaos. He stood on the precipice of upheaval, knowing that the truth would not just set him free, it would expose the rot at the core of their society. Morning light filtered through the cracked, stained glass of the exiles' church, casting muted colors over the worn pews and the scattered tokens of broken promises on the floor. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the lingering aroma of mossy tubers simmering in a communal pot. A handful of supporters gathered, dressed in layered clothing of muted earth tones, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. Outside, the sounds of street vendors hawking skewered fish melded with the distant hum of the river, a reminder of life beyond these walls. Today, Jasper Caldwell would attempt to rally the people against the shadow looming over them, armed only with his conviction and the fear that his truth might not be enough. Jasper inhaled deeply, the stale air heavy with the musk of fermented fruits and the faint tang of roasted insects. He surveyed the small group seated cross-legged on the floor, their hands resting on their knees, anticipation crackling in the air. This contagion, it's connected to the leader's death, can't you feel that? Something's rotten in this place. His voice was steady but urgent. A murmur rippled through the crowd as he spoke of hidden truths and whispered secrets, faces shifting from shock to contemplation. Just as he began to gain momentum, the heavy oak doors swung open, revealing Cyrus, flanked by a throng of supporters. The smell of freshly baked bread wafted in with them, a stark contrast to the meager offerings inside. Jasper's stomach twisted. This was no ordinary visit. Cyrus was here to dismantle him. Cyrus strode forward, his eyes glinting with disdain. "You think you can stroll in here and spread your pathetic little lies?" His voice boomed, rich and confident, demanding attention. He bowed slightly, a mocking gesture, hands clasped together as if in prayer. The crowd shifted uneasily, their shared courage faltering under the weight of his intimidation. A few of Cyrus's supporters exchanged glances, doubt creeping into their expressions. As Cyrus's presence cast shadows over the truth, Jasper fought to reveal. "This is not the time for fear-mongering, Cyrus." Jasper shot back, pulse quickening. "People are suffering." He held Cyrus's gaze, unwilling to look away, but the atmosphere grew tense. Someone from the back whispered a prayer to Caliph, the keeper of secrets, seeking guidance amidst the chaos. The taboo of discussing the contagion openly pressed down on him, a fear that seeped into every corner of their lives. He had to find a way to turn the tide, even if it meant risking everything. As Cyrus's voice drowned out his own, Jasper's thoughts raced the mossy tubers simmered in the pot behind him, waiting for a... Chapter 3. Echoes of Identity. The square of echoes lay cloaked in darkness, damp stone beneath Jasper's feet. Flickering lanterns cast long shadows, the scent of roasted insects mingling with earthy notes of mossy tubers boiling from a nearby vendor's pot. Whispers floated like ghosts through the tense air, while the distant melody of a street performer's flute wove a haunting reminder of life outside the encroaching danger. Jasper's pulse raced, adrenaline flooding his veins as muted figures began to materialize from the shadows, their masked faces glinting ominously in the dim light. He pressed his back against the cool stone wall, the chill seeping into his bones as the gathering closed in, tension and fear thickening the air. Jasper swallowed hard, the metallic tang of blood filling his mouth as he instinctively reached for the dagger hidden in his boot. The masked figures moved with a predator's grace, each step echoing the silent threat they posed. He caught a glimpse of a slender figure, their finely made clothing a stark contrast to his rough-hewn garments. A flash of steel caught his eye as the figure raised a weapon, the flicker of a blade glinting dangerously close. "You should have left it alone, Caldwell," a voice hissed, cold and mocking, sending a chill through his body. He had to stand his ground, but the superstitions of his people echoed in his mind. Spirits of the vanished roamed these streets at twilight, seeking vengeance for those who dared disturb their peace. "What do ya want from me?" Jasper shouted, his voice trembling, betraying his bravado. He forced himself to maintain eye contact, remembering the lessons of respect ingrained in him since childhood. Keeping his gaze steady, he resisted the urge to bow as fear crept in. It would only show weakness. The figures shifted closer, menace thickening the air. One masked figure stepped forward, gesturing with a hand over their heart in a mockery of respect that ignited a ripple of anger within him. He clenched his fists, the urge to lash out boiling inside him, but he needed to remain calm. "This investigation threatens everything we've built. Leave it, and you may yet see another dawn," the voice warned, laced with a sinister promise. Jasper's mind raced as he pieced together the implications. He had stumbled upon secrets that could unravel the delicate balance of power in the square.
The thought of abandoning his quest felt like a betrayal of his people. He cast a glance towards the old shrines at the square's edge, their presence looming like a silent accusation. Disturbing them was taboo, yet here he stood, ready to test those very boundaries. As the figures advanced, weapons poised, dread curled in his chest. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the fight ahead.
The square of echoes loomed before Jasper Caldwell, a cracked stone expanse that vibrated with tension. The air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and lingering dread, thrummed with anticipation as shadows shifted, and masked figures gathered like dark clouds on the horizon. He stepped forward, heart thudding against his ribs, a fervent prayer to Caliph on his lips. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the very ground held its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. This place, once vibrant, now stood as a battleground, and Jasper knew that the answers he sought lay within the web of deceit surrounding him. He could not falter, not now, when the fate of the city hung in the balance. Jasper squared his shoulders, muscles coiling like a spring. "What's it to you, then?" His voice sliced through the murmur of the crowd, steady despite the tremor in his hands. The masked figures shifted, weapons bristling in the dim light. A cruel laugh sliced through the tension, echoing from the shadows. "Do you really believe you can defy me? This city is mine, a mere fly trapped in my web." Anger surged through Jasper, and he clenched his fists. "No more threats. I demand answers." His words erupted, defiant and raw. In response, a figure lunged forward, blade glinting. Jasper sidestepped just in time, adrenaline coursing through him as he stumbled back. Laughter erupted around him, a cruel symphony of intimidation that tightened around him like a noose. Chaos erupted in the square as Jasper's feet found purchase on cobblestones slick with rain, the echoes of his heartbeat thrumming in his ears. He hesitated, scanning the figures, closing in, eyes burning with disdain and weapons drawn. One step back, then another. They advanced, shadows merging into a singular threat. Panic clawed at him. He had to escape, had to warn the others. "This isn't over," he shouted, but his words felt hollow, swallowed by the darkness. A sharp crack shattered the air as a blow landed, sending him staggering. Pain flared through his side, igniting his resolve. He fled, weaving through the throng of onlookers, their faces etched with fear as whispers wrapped around him like a tightening shroud. "He knows too much," one voice urged. "We have to silence him permanently." Each word pricked at his skin, igniting desperation. The city's pulse quickened, a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. He ducked into an alley, gasping for breath, pressing his back against the cool stone, the rough surface grounding him. Jasper felt the echoes of their threats reverberate in his mind. Cyrus Morrigan's name loomed larger with every heartbeat, a dark specter that fueled his determination. He refused to let fear dictate his actions. The path ahead. Jasper Caldwell stepped into the exile's church, his heart thumping in his chest. Shadows loomed in every corner, the fading light outside stretching into the musty interior like dark fingers. The weight of the truth pressed against him, urging him to confront the masked figures lurking within the walls. Resolute, he moved deeper into the church, every instinct screaming that danger awaited him. The stakes had never been higher. Failure was not an option. Not now, not when lives depended on his ability to unravel this web of deceit. A rustle echoed from the shadows, and Jasper froze, muscles tensing, the air thickened with menace, his breath shallow. "What the hell do you want from me?" he demanded, voice steadier than he felt. A voice hissed from the darkness, laced with malice. The leader stepped forward, a cruel smile beneath the mask. "You really think you can expose us? How quaint, Caldwell. Dig deeper and see how quickly you get buried with the truth." Jasper's heart raced as masked figures emerged, weapons sparkling ominously in the dim light, their faces obscured, yet their intent clear. He had stumbled into a trap. The very confrontation he sought had turned against him. He clenched his fists, fighting to keep his composure as the true stakes crystallized. They weren't just threatening his investigation, they were threatening his life. The leader leaned closer, the tension suffocating. "By the end of the week, you'll be just like us, lost, forgotten, or worse, one of us. You'll wear our mask, and no one will ever know who you were." Dread coiled in his gut. He couldn't let that happen. He was so close to the truth. Yet with every second that passed, the weight of their words threatened to crush him. Could he fight against such overwhelming odds, or would he be forced to walk away and save himself? Jasper's mind whirled as he took a step back, adrenaline surging. "I'll expose you.
I'll find a way to make this public, he spat defiantly, the words feeling like a lifeline. The cold laughter of the masked figures surrounded him, chilling his resolve. You can try, but time slips away like sand through your fingers.
The door slammed behind him, its echo reverberating through the exiles' church like a warning bell. Shadows flickered along the cracked stone walls, mixing with the whispered prayers of outcasts seeking solace. Jasper Caldwell leaned against the cool stone of a pillar, the rapid beat of his heart thudding in his chest. 3 days. The countdown hung over him, a stark reminder of the contagion's tightening grip on the town. Dusk settled in, wrapping the sanctuary in an eerie embrace, the flickering candles casting dancing light across his determined face, illuminating his resolve amidst the chaos. He hung his head, inhaling the scent of damp earth and aged wood that anchored him. Each breath echoed the choice he faced: retreat into safety or confront the darkness head-on. He could still hear the slashing of weapons, the laughter of those who thrived on fear. A flicker of anger sparked within him. No more hiding. He clenched his fists, his nails biting into his palms, a welcome distraction from the gnawing uncertainty. No one else would stand up to the threats. Not if he didn't, but how could he protect others? The whispers of the church wrapped around him like a shroud, igniting something deeper within him. Memories of their suffering surged within him, igniting a fierce determination. Jasper straightened, determination tightening his posture. Each flicker of candlelight illuminated his resolve. He could uncover the conspiracy. He would take the risk. Every moment wasted was one closer to loss. Time was not just slipping, it was a relentless tide that could drown them all if he didn't act. The shadows in the corners of the church felt like they were watching him, creeping closer with every heartbeat. Jasper's gaze drifted toward the altar, where flickering candles created a dance of light, casting elongated shapes across the floor. Closing his eyes, he envisioned the truth he sought, the threads of deception tangled like roots of an ancient tree. A truth that could either save our skins or bury us all. His pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the understanding that clarity often arose from chaos. The congregation around him, lost souls searching for hope, needed a champion, and he would be that champion, even if it meant walking into the darkest shadows of his own fears. As the last bit of sunlight slipped away, leaving just the flickering candlelight, Jasper inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of what was left unsaid. He stood taller, his decision solidifying within him. The contagion wouldn't just claim lives, it threatened to bury the truth beneath layers of silence and fear. Dusk draped the square of echoes in a shroud of uncertainty, shadows creeping from the crumbling stone facades like echoes of long-buried truths. The air was thick with the acrid scent of sweat and smoke clinging to Jasper Caldwell's skin as he stood poised against the chill of the encroaching night. Distant shouts reverberated through the plaza, mingling with the metallic tang of fear that hung like a heavy fog over the square. Masked figures emerged from the gloom, their intentions obscured as they watched him closely. Jasper's fingers danced nervously along the edge of his notebook, the rough fabric of his uniform grounding him, yet the biting air sent a shiver down his spine. This was more than an investigation, it was a reckoning, and he was out of time. You think this intimidation act is going to make anyone like you? What's next? A puppet show, hissed one of the figures, their voice low yet steady, like the rumble of thunder before a storm. Jasper's gaze darted, assessing the glint of steel in their hands, their bodies coiled like springs ready to snap. Anxiety spiraled within him, a familiar rhythm that accompanied authority. You're in way over your head, officer. Cyrus doesn't take kindly to meddling. Back off, or else what? You think you can just walk away from this? The other figures remained silent,
their eyes piercing like daggers. "What do you think I know? Or is this just a show of strength because you're scared?" He stepped back, the cold stone biting into his feet, weighing his options. Escape or confrontation? What would his father have expected? Tension crackled in the air as one of them scoffed, adjusting his mask. "Caldwell, you're a pawn in a game you don't get. We'll find you, and you'll regret this. Mark my words." The threat clung to him, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. Jasper's instincts urged him to flee, yet the words tethered him, a cruel reminder of his insignificance in the grand scheme. What would it take to be seen? "I don't need to be clever, I need to be right. And you're wrong if you think this ends here." His voice steadied, a low rumble that cut through the tension. Doubt gnawed at his gut, making him hesitate. He glanced toward the exit, knowing time slipped away like sand through fingers. The cool air pressed against his skin, urging him to move. He forced himself to stand firm, a soldier against the tide of fear. As the masked figures shifted closer, the shadows of the square danced ominously, and a sharp crack of thunder echoed in the distance. With his heart racing, he bolted, adrenaline surging through him as he sprinted toward the nearest exit. The threat clung to him, like a shadow.
Chapter 4 Veil of Dusk. Dusk enveloped the exiles' church like a shroud, the last rays of sunlight retreating behind jagged cliffs that loomed like dark sentinels. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth, mingled with a faint sweetness from wildflowers, pressed against Jasper's skin, stirring his fears like a second shadow. The colossal stained-glass window, fractured and colorful, cast kaleidoscopic shards onto the cracked stone floor, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the fading light. An eerie melody of wind howled through the crevices, whispering tales of lost souls, while the occasional murmur from the outcasts outside wove a strange comfort through the haunting silence. As Jasper stepped deeper into the church, his breath quickened and his chest tightened. Each step felt like remnants of hope, and betrayal tugged at him, unwilling to let him pass. The atmosphere pulsed with unspoken truths as he approached the altar where Cyrus awaited, a figure cloaked in uncertainty. "You shouldn't be here, Jasper." Cyrus's voice slithered through the air, smooth and dangerous, making a shiver race down his spine. Jasper leaned closer, hands clenched. "Look, just give it to me straight. What's this contagion really about? Don't hold back." His voice echoed in the vast emptiness, bouncing off the crumbling walls adorned with remnants of old prayers, their faded words suffocated by time. Cyrus's eyes glinted like shards of glass as he leaned forward, the light from the stained glass igniting a flicker of something sinister in his gaze. "It's not just a disease. It's a tool, a means to cleanse the unworthy. Simple as that." Those words hung heavily between them, the air thick with tension. A sudden gust of wind howled through the church, rattling the stained glass and drowning out the murmurs from outside. Cold sweat beaded on his brow as a jolt of panic surged through him. "You're lying," he shouted, his voice cracking under the strain of fear and anger. The shadows around them felt alive, closing in as if the very walls listened intently. Just as he prepared to demand more, a loud crash echoed from outside, sending a shiver through him. Jasper stood frozen, his hands clenched and his breath shallow, his emotions twisted in a chaotic storm. The church, a sanctuary turned prison, felt alive with the echoes of history and the palpable tension between them. As he turned towards the sound, the light from the stained glass window flickered ominously, casting fleeting shadows that danced like specters. He braced himself, knowing that whatever lay beyond the doors could shatter his world forever. The atmosphere hung heavy, a fragile balance, teetering on the edge of darkness, leaving the truth tantalizingly out of reach. Dusk enveloped the exiles' church in shadows, thickening the air with a sense of foreboding. Jasper Caldwell stood beside Cyrus, the flickering light from the stained glass windows casting ghostly shapes on their faces. They needed to uncover the source of the contagion before the week was out. Failure meant the consequences could become permanent, turning them into what they feared most. Each second ticked away, driving them deeper into a chasm of revelations. The goal was clear: bring justice to a corrupt system, yet the darkness was encroaching, and the stakes had never been higher. Cyrus pulled open a hidden compartment in the worn wooden altar, revealing a cache of documents that smelled of mildew and betrayal. "Look at this, Jasper," he exclaimed, his voice slicing through the stillness.
A chill snaked down Jasper's spine as he scanned the pages, the words seeping into his consciousness like poison. Evidence linked the contagion to a powerful faction within the council. The implications rattled him, shattering the very foundations of his beliefs. Could it be that those he trusted were orchestrating this chaos? His throat tightened as panic surged within him. They had to act, and time was slipping away, 3 days left. We need to expose this, he urged, doubt gnawing at him. What if he was wrong? What if the truth shattered him instead? Cyrus leaned closer, his expression a mix of exhilaration and fear. This could ruin them, Jasper. But it could ruin us too. We aren't just poking the bear, we're lighting a fuse. You really think they'll just let us walk away? Each word hung heavy, a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. The urgency of their mission pressed down on Jasper, increasing the tension between them. They had to choose, reveal the truth and face the council's wrath, or bury it and remain complicit in their own fear. The clock was ticking, and the weight of their decision loomed larger with every moment. Jasper grappled with the implications of his choices. Exposing the council meant risking everything, his identity, his integrity, but to do nothing felt like surrendering to the darkness that threatened to consume them. He glanced at the papers, each one a testament to betrayal, and a fire ignited within him. We can't just sit here letting them take the upper hand. We gotta move, and quick, before it's too late. His voice trembled with conviction, but beneath the resolve lay a tempest of uncertainty. Would they become monsters in their quest for justice? Seconds felt like hours, and every beat of his heart echoed the urgency of their mission. The shadows thickened around them, and he could almost hear the council's footsteps approaching, a reminder that they were running out of time. With a deep breath, Jasper snatched.
Dusk settled heavily over the exiles' church, its shadows stretching like fingers hungry for secrets. Jasper Caldwell stood before the ornate doors of a hidden chamber, his pulse quickened under the gravity of the moment. "If we don't figure out what's going on with this contagion soon, we're in deep trouble, y'all hear?" he whispered, urgency twisting in his stomach. The council's machinations threatened to become permanent, their corruption solidified by Jasper's failure. With only days left before the week ended, and the stakes higher than ever, he pushed the doors open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with whispers of betrayal and decay inside the chamber. Dust motes danced in the fading light, but Jasper's attention was drawn to the scattered papers and hastily scrawled notes on a table. "Look at this, Cyrus," he breathed, the thrill of discovery battling against the tightness in his chest. The documents hinted at a conspiracy that reached far beyond the contagion. As he reached for one, something cold and metallic caught his eye. A dagger, its blade glistening ominously in the waning light. "This isn't just about the sickness, is it?" he asked, a tremor of dread coloring his voice. Cyrus's expression darkened, and the air thickened with unspoken truths. Cyrus stepped closer, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Jasper, you think you're just a spectator in this mess, but you're way more than that. You just don't see it yet." The words struck like a blow, and Jasper staggered back. Thoughts spiraled chaotically, overwhelming him. The clock ticked louder in his ears, each tick a relentless reminder to act before it was too late. "You're part of this, Jasper. They're coming for you." A sudden noise echoed from the entrance, snapping him back to the present. The council member who had approached earlier was joined by others, their footsteps echoing in the sacred space. Jasper's hands trembled, and his breath quickened. "We have to get out of here," he shouted, but Cyrus grabbed his arm. "No, we need this evidence." He clenched his fists, torn between staying and fleeing. They could risk exposure and stay, or flee with nothing. Every second felt like an eternity, each tick a reminder of the stakes. If they didn't uncover the truth now, they would lose everything, himself included. Jasper swallowed hard, the weight of the decision suffocating. "We can't let them take this away from us. I can't become what they want me to be." In that moment, clarity surged through him. With fierce resolve, he snatched the documents, stuffing them into his satchel. But just as they turned to escape, the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside with the shadows. Dusk crept into the exiles' church, cloaking the cracked walls in shadows that whispered secrets of betrayal. The air was thick with dust, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Jasper Caldwell stepped into the hidden chamber, adrenaline surging through him as he surveyed the evidence strewn across the room. Documents, maps and photographs linking the contagion to the council's upper echelons. A knot formed in his stomach as he absorbed the implications of their findings. They had less than a week to unravel this conspiracy before the consequences became permanent. This mission was no longer just about survival. It was about preserving his identity, his very essence. Time pressed against him, each moment a relentless hammer on his chest, reminding him that every second mattered. Cyrus knelt by a table, flipping through yellowed papers, his brow knitted in concentration. This is precisely their scheme. The contagion serves merely as a weapon cloaked in familiarity, he said, leaning closer, his voice trembling with urgency. The ticking clock echoed in Jasper's mind, a reminder that they had less than a week to expose the truth. Jasper grimaced as the weight of their discoveries settled heavily on him. This was bigger than he'd imagined, and the burden felt unbearable. What if they were too late? The documents revealed connections to the very people Jasper had trusted, figures he'd once seen as allies. The truth was a dagger to his heart. "How could I have missed this?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Jasper bit his lip, the uncertainty swelling within him. If he couldn't trust those in power, how could he trust himself? He glanced at Cyrus, who was still immersed in the chaos of information, oblivious to the storm brewing in Jasper's mind. Seconds slipped away like grains of sand, each one marking the dwindling time left to act before it was too late. A loud thud interrupted their focus, sending a shockwave through the chamber. Jasper's heart raced. They weren't alone. Heavy footsteps approached, deliberate and ominous. "We need to get out of here," he hissed, grabbing Cyrus's arm. Panic surged through his veins. The walls felt suffocating, and the air thickened with the smell of damp stone and fear. If they were caught now, with this information, everything would be lost. His mission, his integrity, his very identity. Time slipped away, and they had no good options left. As they bolted for the exit, Jasper's heart raced, each beat a reminder of their precarious situation. But as he turned to glance back at the chamber filled with damning evidence, doubt gripped him. Would this revelation condemn him? The door slammed shut behind them. The exile's church loomed in the darkness, its ancient stones weathered by countless storms. The massive stained glass window depicted the struggle between light and darkness, casting colorful shards across the cracked stone floor. Surrounding the building, the scree was littered with broken promises, glinting like scattered jewels in the moonlight. Inside, the air was thick with tension, a haunting yet hopeful ambience where whispers of the past mingled with the vibrant energy of outcasts seeking refuge. Jasper Caldwell leaned against the cold wall, his heart racing as he focused on the flickering candlelight illuminating the altar. He had only 3 days left before the council's grip tightened forever, a contagion of corruption spreading unchecked through the city. He needed to confront Cyrus, rally their allies, and expose the conspiracy threatening to consume them all. "We ain't got time to be sitting on our hands, Cyrus. We gotta move, like yesterday here?" His voice trembled with urgency. Cyrus stood rigid, arms crossed, the flickering light highlighting the sharp angles of his face. "Proof, we don't have time for your foolishness, Caldwell." Charging in blind is the height of stupidity. His tone was cold, almost mocking, yet Jasper's muscles tightened as he studied Cyrus's face. They had already gathered enough to make their case. The council's dark deeds were no longer mere whispers. They were a stark reality. "Every moment we delay, they draw closer to discovering what we know. We need to rally support before the week is over." "Support?" Cyrus scoffed, shaking his head. "You think they'll rally behind us if we go in half-cocked? You're not ready for this, Jasper. You think you can lead?" The words struck like a physical blow, and Jasper's pulse quickened. He wanted to shout, to prove he was more than a mere pawn in this game. His stomach twisted, and he glanced away, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Could he truly expose the council, or would he be lost to the very darkness he sought to vanquish? Footsteps approached, chilling Jasper to the bone. They weren't alone. Panic surged through him, and he glanced at Cyrus, whose eyes darted toward the sound, tension coiling in the air. "We have to decide now, Cyrus." Jasper urged, desperation surging through him. But Cyrus hesitated, and the silence stretched between them.
The intruder could be a guard or worse, someone sent to silence them. "We can't lose this chance," Jasper whispered fiercely.
Chapter 5 Awakening in Light. Jasper stepped into the square of echoes, the shadows clinging to him, heavy and familiar. Dusk cast a muted glow over the cracked stone plaza, where the air thrummed with anticipation and the lingering scent of sweat and smoke. Once a vibrant gathering place, it now lay in ruins, bordered by crumbling walls and graffiti that told stories of lost hope. A dilapidated statue stood at the center, draped in darkness, bearing witness to the chaos around it. The crowd that had filled the square moments before began to scatter, leaving behind echoes of grief and anger that mirrored the turmoil roiling inside him. Memories of his friend's lifeless body seared into his thoughts, the betrayal by the system they had fought to uphold igniting a fire in his chest. Jasper stood at the crossroads of vengeance and justice, grappling with the gravity of his decision. The crowd's teary eyes and trembling lips spoke of their grief, a painful reminder of hope that had flickered and died. Jasper clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms as whispers of fear slithered through the air. Their averted gazes suggested that looking too long might summon retribution. A knot formed in his stomach. The path to healing lay through confrontation, but would he walk it alone or rally the broken fragments of their community? Anger coiled within him, urging action. Should he confront Cyrus and challenge the tyrant in his lair of deceit? The memory of his friend's smile pierced through the fog of despair, igniting a flicker of hope amid the darkness. Would striking back only tighten Cyrus's grip? Jasper's breath hitched, everything feeling raw as he wrestled with his thoughts, a spectre demanding resolution. As dusk deepened, the last remnants of daylight surrendered to night, and Jasper stood resolute, pulsing with unspoken possibility. The square of echoes was alive with the weight of his decision. Could he ignite the spark of rebellion? He could still hear the laughter of his friend, a haunting melody woven into the fabric of this place. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges. He took a step forward, his heart raced, caught between dread and resolve. Would he rally the community against Cyrus's relentless ambition, or watch them crumble in despair? The question lingered, heavy in the air, as he searched the faces around him, waiting for their answer. Dawn crept over the jagged cliff like a shy child, casting pale fingers of light through the colossal stained-glass window of the exiles' church. The vibrant shards of color danced across the cracked stone floor, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the still, cool air. A faint breeze carried the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, mingling with the lingering bitterness that clung to the weathered stones. The church stood as a weathered sentinel, its ancient walls adorned with ivy and remnants of fervent prayers, whispering tales of those who once sought refuge here. Jasper glanced around, determination igniting within him as the morning light bathed the space, thoughts racing with urgency. As Jasper stepped inside, the echoes of the past wrapped around him like a shroud. The distant sound of wind howling through the crevices harmonized with the soft murmurs of the outcasts, creating an eerie yet comforting symphony. He hesitated at the threshold, fingers brushing against the rough stone walls, cool and damp beneath his touch. Each step felt like a trespass into sacred ground, and he swallowed hard, tasting the sharpness of resolve on his tongue. The air was thick with unspoken fears, and he caught faint whispers of those who had come before him, urging him to act. Jasper's pulse quickened as he moved deeper into the church, scanning the dimly lit corners for any sign of his fellow loyalists. Suddenly, the stillness shattered with the clatter of boots on stone. He pressed himself against the cool wall, blending into the shadows. Through the vibrant shards of stained glass, he caught glimpses of Cyrus's men, their figures stark against the colorful light, predators patrolling for their prey. Jasper's resolve solidified. He needed to find the remaining loyalists, knowing the stakes had never felt higher. Just as he mustered the courage to call out, a shout echoed through the air, reverberating off the ancient walls. There, by the altar. Panic surged through him as figures emerged from the shadows. His allies already captured, their pleas silenced by Cyrus's guards. Chaos erupted around him, the atmosphere now crackling with tension. Jasper's mind raced, plotting his next move as he knew he couldn't remain unnoticed much longer.
As he slipped back into the shadows, the sweet smell of wildflowers turned to the acrid scent of sweat and fear. Jasper's pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the fading whispers of history that had once comforted him. The stones beneath his feet felt solid, yet the ground seemed to shift with every step, each movement a reminder of his failure. The dawn light dimmed to muted gray, illuminating the chaos that
Dawn light crept through the cracked stained glass of the exiles' church, casting splattered patterns on the damp stone floor. Shadows clung stubbornly in the corners, resisting the new day's arrival. Jasper Caldwell sat in a worn pew, fingers tracing the slick wood, seeking solace in its familiar grain. Memories of his friend's laughter clashed violently with the stark image of his lifeless body, displayed as a warning. The air thickened around him, suffocating and heavy, each whisper a reminder of despair that coiled around him. He inhaled deeply, the scent of incense mingling with the musty odor of decay, a reminder of the sanctuary's purpose and its tragic failure to shield them from Cyrus's wrath. Jasper shifted, the creak of the pew echoing through the stillness. Fists clenched, a fire ignited in his chest. Just outside, the murmurs of fellow exiles seeped through the cracked walls, voices tinged with fear and hopelessness. He strained to catch their words, a desperate plea for safety, a call for vengeance. Yet even as anger surged, doubt shadowed his resolve. Would a reckless strike against Cyrus merely deepen the cycle of violence? A woman's voice rose above the others. "We can't let this stand. We must show them we're not afraid." Her words stirred something primal within him, echoing his own desire for revenge. He could almost feel the metallic tang of blood clinging to his tongue. But as her voice faltered, a sob breaking through, Jasper's heart ached. What would they gain? Another death, more families shattered. Leaning forward, elbows resting on his knees, he stared into the dimness. The flickering candles cast shadows, their flames dancing like the hopes of the outcasts. Unity could be their strength, he reminded himself. They needed to rise together, not as scattered remnants of a broken community, but as a force. Yet the thirst for vengeance gnawed at him, a relentless beast. Two paths lay stark before him, swift retribution spiraling into chaos, or the arduous journey of healing and resistance. Jasper's eyes darted around the church, drinking in the faces of the exiles, doubt and fear etched into their features. He slumped, the memory of his friend's death pressing heavily on his shoulders. He longed to speak, to rally them. His tongue felt heavy, the words trapped. How could he inspire hope when all he felt was the urge to lash out? The silence stretched, thick with unspoken anguish, as the dawn light intensified, illuminating the church with a soft glow. A gentle breeze rustled through the open door, carrying the scent of wet earth and the promise of change. Straightening, decision crystallizing within him, he would not let revenge blind him to the possibility of solidarity. As dawn broke, the first light spilled through the colossal stained glass window of the exiles' church, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the cracked stone floor, like fragmented memories of hope. Jasper knelt on the cold, uneven surface, the rough texture biting into his knees and anchoring him in the present. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and a hint of sweetness, a daring promise from wildflowers blooming amidst decay. The wind howled through the crevices of the ancient stone, creating a haunting melody that echoed the whispers of lost souls. The morning chill seeped into his bones, grief and vengeance coiling tightly around his heart, urging him to act. Jasper's breath caught as the sun crested the horizon, bathing the church in a warm golden hue that contrasted sharply with the slate of his heart. "I heard laughter just now, but the wind stole it away like it always does," he murmured, the crumbling walls adorned with vine-clad remnants of old prayers urging him to remember. Each whisper of the past curled around him, but he pushed back, visions of those who had suffered under Cyrus's tyranny flashing in his mind. The vibrant colors of the stained glass flickered in the light, illuminating the shadows where despair lurked, reminding him that darkness could be a prison or a sanctuary, depending on the choices made. Resolute, he clenched his fists, feeling the rough stone beneath his palms, anchoring himself in the present, even as memories clawed at his resolve. The church sighed with every gust of wind, mirroring Jasper's heavy heart. His throat tightened, the taste of salt from unshed tears mingling with the cool morning air.
Broken promises scattered around the scree glinted like lost jewels in the dawn light, each fragment a reminder of the burdens he carried. They were not just shards of glass, they were hopes and dreams of his people, discarded and forgotten. The air thickened with the scent of impending rain, contrasting with the vibrant wildflowers that dared to bloom in the cracks of despair. Shivering, he felt a spark of newfound hope as he prepared to gather these remnants of community before fear silenced their voices forever. A sudden clatter outside drew his gaze to the heavy oak doors of the church. The sound of footsteps echoed, small yet urgent. Pushing himself up from the pew, Jasper inhaled deeply, the earthy scent mingling with his resolve as he braced himself for whatever lay beyond. The church felt alive, a fortress of resilience against the darkness encroaching. No longer would vengeance dictate his path.
The square of echoes lay shrouded in darkness, illuminated by flickering torches that cast long shadows on the cracked stone expanse. Jasper Caldwell raced into the square, adrenaline surging through his veins. Execution loomed. Confronting Cyrus was his only option. His confidant, bound and helpless at the center of the crowd, awaited a grim fate. 3 days remained until the contagion could spiral out of control, and failure meant becoming a puppet of the very system he sought to dismantle. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, the scent of sweat and smoke mingling in a suffocating embrace. The dilapidated statue at the center, draped in shadows, bore witness to the chaos, amplifying the tension that gripped the onlookers. Cyrus stood tall, a sinister grin plastered across his face as he addressed the gathered crowd, his voice dripping with malice. "Look at this traitor, helpless and alone. He thought he could challenge me, but here he is, bound by his own cowardice." Jasper's pulse quickened as the crowd stirred, their disdain palpable, fueled by Cyrus's words. Each moment of hesitation tightened the noose around his friend's neck. The weight of their judgment pressed down on him, suffocating his resolve. He scanned the crowd, searching for a way to intervene. A murmur rippled through the crowd as Cyrus raised an arm, signaling his guards. Jasper's breath quickened as panic gripped his throat. He noted the guards flanking him, their eyes cold and unyielding. "You want to save him? You'll have to go through me first," one sneered, stepping forward and blocking his path. The relentless countdown echoed in his ears, each second intensifying the urgency of the execution, a reminder that with every passing moment he risked losing his friend to a corrupt system. "Cyrus, you call this justice? You're just a monster in a fancy coat," Jasper shouted, his voice cutting through the crowd. Some in the crowd wavered, nodding in uncertain agreement, but Cyrus's laughter rang out, hollow and cruel. "Justice, please, Caldwell. This is power at its finest, and you're just a pawn now." In that moment, Cyrus revealed a hidden threat, a small device glinting ominously in the torchlight. "One step closer, and I'll unleash a contagion that will sweep through this crowd, binding you all to my will. You want to save him? Fine, but know this, your choice will condemn them all." Jasper froze, the weight of the decision crashing down upon him. Save his friend or protect the innocent bystanders? The seconds slipped away like sand through his fingers. Jasper's heart raced as he glanced at his friend, fear evident in his wide eyes, while he struggled against his bonds. Time was running out. He had to decide. Chapter 6. Fragments of Dawn. Morning light spilled through the grimy stained glass of the exiles' church, casting fragmented rainbows on the dust-laden floor. Jasper Caldwell stood at the entrance. The adrenaline coursed through his veins as he clutched the ledger like a lifeline. He had only days to confront Cyrus about the hidden records that could expose the corruption festering in their community. With the specter of the contagion looming over them, every second counted. If he failed to rally the townsfolk before the week ended, the risk of losing everything, his integrity, his identity, would become an inescapable reality. Today, he would challenge the man who cloaked himself in power, igniting the spark of rebellion against their corrupt leaders. Jasper stepped further into the church, the air thick with incense and tension. Cyrus lounged at the altar, his back turned, casually flipping through a leather-bound book. "You've come to pray or waste my time, Caldwell?" His voice dripped with mockery, sending a shiver coursing down Jasper's spine. He took a deep breath, forcing the anxiety down. "I know about the ledger, Cyrus.
It's time the community learned the truth about you and the others. We can't let this contagion spread unchecked." Cyrus turned slowly, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "The truth? How utterly amusing. What could a fool like you possibly offer?" "I could expose your little secrets, Jasper. The town would turn on you faster than you can say hypocrite." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Jasper fought to keep his composure as he faced a wave of panic. If he didn't act now, if he let Cyrus intimidate him, the chance to save his community would fade away as quickly as it had come. He clenched his jaw, determination fueling his next words. "You think you can silence me?" "Not a chance, Cyrus." Jasper's voice trembled with a mix of anger and desperation. Every tick of the clock reminded him that time was running out. Cyrus stepped closer, invading his space, the mocking smile never leaving his face. "Oh, but I think you will. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself on the wrong side of the truth, and it won't just ruin you, it'll ruin them too. How many lives are you willing to sacrifice to save your own skin?" Jasper gasped, the decision weighing heavily on him. He was caught between wanting to fight and the fear of what it would cost. There had to be a way to turn the tide before it was too late.
The exiles' church loomed ahead, its weathered stones absorbing the fading light of dusk, shadows stretching like the grasping hands of the past. Jasper Caldwell paused at the threshold, a chill creeping along his skin. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. He had until the end of the week to unearth the truth behind the contagion ravaging their community, and this ledger hidden deep within the altar could be the key to exposing the corrupt leaders. Sweat trickled down his back, a reminder of the urgency weighing on him. Failure meant not just losing a chance for justice, but succumbing to cowardice. He needed to act immediately inside. The air was thick with dust and stale incense, each breath heavy with the burden of his mission. Jasper stepped forward, each footfall echoing like a countdown, a reminder of what was at stake. Cyrus's mocking voice echoed in his mind, taunting him with the consequences of inaction. Scanning the altar, fingers trembling, he brushed against the carved wood. A hidden compartment must be here. The shadows played tricks, and every creak of the floorboards warned him. He had to find that ledger before the week slipped away, or risk becoming just another victim, swallowed by the same darkness he sought to expose. Jasper fumbled over the altar's surface, searching for the seam that would reveal the compartment. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the silence that enveloped him. The faces of those suffering from the contagion flashed in his mind, people he'd grown up with, now mere shadows of their former selves. They needed him to act, to unite against the leaders profiting from their pain. As his fingers brushed against a latch, the wood splintered under pressure, a sharp crack echoing through the empty church. Fear gripped him. Had he triggered a trap? Time seemed to stretch as he awaited the worst. With a desperate jerk, he pulled the latch. The compartment swung open, revealing a ledger filled with records, transaction after transaction between the leaders and the outcasts. Exhilaration and dread surged through him, choking off his breath. This was it, the proof he needed. But just as he reached for the ledger, a low rumble echoed through the church. The ground shifted beneath him, and dust cascaded from the ceiling. He had to get out before the very structure of corruption he was trying to expose collapsed around him. Jasper snatched the ledger and cradled it against his chest as he stumbled back, the walls groaning, as if protesting the truths he was about to unveil. He had the evidence, but what good was it if he couldn't escape? The urgency loomed in his mind, a reminder that he had only days left to rally the community before they all lost themselves to fear. With one final glance back at the altar, he bolted toward the exit. Dusk enveloped the exiles' church, casting elongated shadows across the worn pews. Jasper Caldwell stood at the altar, gripping the ledger tightly, its weight a constant reminder of the truth it held. Only 3 days remained to rally the outcasts before the contagion took root in their hearts, turning them into the very thing they feared. The flickering candlelight danced across the tattered pages, illuminating the stark reality of their situation. Jasper scanned the faces of the gathered outcasts. Each was weary and weathered, their despair palpable. He had to inspire them, ignite a fire against the corrupt leaders whose greed had driven them to this brink of ruin. Yet, doubt loomed, threatening to drown out any flicker of hope. Jasper drew a deep breath as he stepped forward.
All right, y'all, listen up. We've got the dirt on those corrupt bastards. Let's band together and show 'em who's in charge. The ledger pressed against his chest, a reminder of the truth it held. A murmur rippled through the crowd, uncertainty crackling. Weary eyes met his, yet a few turned away, faces set in doubt. A fracture formed in their resolve, threatening to split them apart. We only have until the end of the week. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything. As he spoke, a voice piped up from the back, sharp as shattered glass. And what if we fail? What if we trust you, Jasper, and it all falls apart? The question hung heavy in the air. Jasper's throat tightened under the weight of their fears. I know it's hard to trust, but we can't let fear dictate our fate. But even as he spoke, uncertainty gnawed at him. Could they unite without trust? Several heads shook, unease spreading like a contagion. One by one, they turned away, resolve cracking under the pressure. Sweat pooled at the base of his neck, and his breath quickened. The clock was ticking, echoing in his ears. If we don't come together, we risk becoming what we despise. We'll lose our identities, and it will be too late. His voice rose, desperation creeping in, but dissent remained alive, a tempest brewing on the horizon. Jasper's heart sank as he faced the growing divide, the ledger slipping slightly in his grip. Please, we have to decide, now. The words rushed out, but the crowd was already fracturing, whispers of mistrust coiling through the air. Then, a voice broke through, hesitant, yet forceful. What if we confront the leaders directly? A ripple of shock ran through the room, and Jasper's breath caught. Time was running out, and every moment felt like a ticking bomb. Would they choose confrontation, or would fear tear them apart? The tension hung thick, and he knew he had to act, before the choice slipped away entirely.
The square of echoes pulsed with a restless energy, the air heavy with the acrid sense of sweat and smoke, underscored by a metallic tang of fear. Jasper Caldwell stood at the center, cobblestones glimmering under the pale morning light, casting long shadows that danced around him. The crowd, a motley gathering of outcasts and disillusioned souls, shifted uneasily, their whispers rising and falling like a restless tide. His resolve wavered, anxiety gnawing at him, his pulse racing. He glanced at his watch, the cold metal a stark reminder of time slipping away, and forced himself to meet the eyes of the people he had come to save. They returned his gaze, a blend of hope and skepticism, and he swallowed hard, steeling himself to speak. This was his moment. This was the change he had fought for long before authority had made him feel invisible. Listen up, folks. We know the truth of what they hide behind those doors. That ledger, it's the proof we need. Jasper's voice sliced through the murmurs, low and steady, each word tumbling out with a conviction that belied the tightening in his throat. Their gazes pressed down on him, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism weighing heavily. He shook off the memory of his first day on the force, the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the precinct, as he faced his colleagues. He had wanted to protect them, but they had seen him as just another cog in the machine. Not today. He would not be overlooked again. We can expose them. Together. Cyrus stepped forward, a sardonic smile curling his lips, his voice smooth yet edged with venom. And why should we listen to you, Jasper? You've always been the one in the back, scribbling notes. Leading is not your forte, is it? His words sliced through the air, and the crowd shifted, uncertainty flickering like candlelight. Jasper clenched his notebook tighter, the familiar texture grounding him as he fought to maintain composure. Did they really see him as just a scribe? Cyrus, you know I'm here for them, not for myself, Jasper replied, his tone steady but infused with sarcasm born from stress. The crowd glanced between them, uncertainty growing like weeds in spring. He recalled the day he confronted his commanding officer about a corrupt case, met with derision and dismissal. The familiar scent of old paper and ink had filled the office, the air thick with disdain. Nothing had changed since then. Authority still twisted the truth. This isn't about me, it's about justice. Cyrus leaned in closer, his voice dropping conspiratorially. But what if you're just using them as a stepping stone? What if the ledger is just a means to an end for you? The crowd tensed, a ripple of discontent passing through them. The square of echoes thrummed with tension, the dim light of dusk casting long shadows across the cracked stone plaza. Once a grand gathering place, the square now bore the scars of neglect, its dilapidated statues standing sentinel amidst the flickering glow of torches. Jasper Caldwell faced the restless outcasts before him, the ledger clutched tightly in his trembling hands, its weight a constant reminder of their dwindling time. "We've got just days left, folks. If we don't make our move before the week's out, the truth's going to get buried, and we'll end up becoming what we're scared of." His voice rose, igniting a flicker of determination in the wary crowd, yet uncertainty loomed in the air, a silent spectre that threatened to extinguish their resolve. Jasper scanned the sea of faces, each marked by a different shade of betrayal. "Look at what they've done to us," he shouted, brandishing the ledger like a torch. "This is proof of their greed and lies. Together we can expose them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but it was quickly overshadowed by Cyrus's smooth voice. He stepped forward, a mocking smile curling at his lips. "And what if Jasper's got his own game to play?" he challenged, his eyes glinting like daggers. The crowd shifted, and Jasper's voice trembled as their attention drifted, uncertainty creeping into his chest. "You want to fight back, don't you?" Jasper pressed, desperation edging into his tone. "We can't let fear dictate our actions any longer." But the crowd was restless, eyes darting between him and Cyrus, who now painted Jasper not as a savior, but as a self-serving traitor. "You think this ledger will save you?" Cyrus sneered, stepping closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "What if it leads us all to ruin? What if Jasper leads us straight into the arms of our enemies?" Panic surged through Jasper's mind. He struggled to breathe as doubt threatened to crush him. A handful of voices rallied behind him, but they were drowned out by skeptics whose shouts mingled with the wind. "Jasper, you're not one of us. You've never suffered like we have," a woman cried out, her voice raw with anger. Hope flickered dangerously low in Jasper's chest as he watched the crowd's resolve fade. The week was slipping away, the deadline looming like a dark cloud above him. "We can't wait until it's too late," he shouted, desperation etched into his voice, but doubt had embedded itself deep. As reluctant faces turned away, the urgency of the moment pressed down on him, a relentless foe. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the square's edge, drawing every eye. A figure stumbled into view, clutching another ledger. A rival's secret, perhaps? The air crackled with a mix of anticipation and dread. Chapter 7. Whispers of Dawn. Dusk settled over the square of echoes, casting long shadows that danced amidst a sea of anxious faces. Jasper stood at the forefront, the faint scent of roasted insects mingling with the earthy aroma of mossy tubers from vendors' stalls. Children huddled near a street performer, his fingers deftly plucking at a battered lute, while two elderly women shared a bowl of steaming stew, their quiet act of communion a testament to shared struggles. Above, the first stars emerged, their light swallowed by heavy clouds threatening rain. Anticipation buzzed in the air, igniting the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Jasper raised his voice, steady and unwavering. "Listen up, we ain't got time for games. This sickness, it's real, and we need to face it head on." He gestured broadly, his hand hovering momentarily over his heart, a subtle bow directed at the leaders clustered on the raised platform. Their muted garments, dark, rich fabrics that spoke of wealth, contrasted sharply with the rough-hewn attire of the crowd, a visual reminder of the chasm separating the privileged from the impoverished. As the leaders exchanged furtive glances, their expressions revealed the weight of unspoken fears. The crowd inhaled sharply, sensing the mounting tension. Cyrus lingered in the shadows, arms crossed, disdain flickering in his cold gaze. Whining. Pathetic. They need to back off and let the real players handle this. The aroma of skewered fish wafted through the air, a stark reminder of simpler times when such meals were shared in joy, not desperation. Doubt flickered in his mind as he observed Jasper's fervent plea. Would it spark a revolution or plunge them deeper into despair? Behind him, scavengers picked through discarded goods, their hands deftly searching for anything useful, epitomizing the struggle of survival in this fractured society. As Jasper continued, his voice pierced the din, causing the crowd to sway with his fervor. "You sit in comfort while we suffer." His words sliced through the air like a blade. The leader's eyes widened. One of them, a woman adorned with intricate patterns on her sleeves, recoiled slightly, instinctively clutching the amulet hanging around her neck, a token of the faith of the bound souls. In that moment, bells tolled in the distance, a haunting reminder of the spirits that roamed freely at twilight. Rain began to fall lightly, mingling with the thick atmosphere of uncertainty, the stakes of their confrontation rising. Finally,
A leader stepped forward, his voice trembling. "You speak of accountability. Yet what will it bring? Fear? Unrest?" he gestured, dismissively, inciting a gasp from the crowd. Jasper.
Dusk settled over the square of echoes, the sky bruised purple and orange, reflecting the turmoil within Jasper Caldwell. He stood at the makeshift podium, heart racing, adrenaline surging as the crowd's gaze pressed down on him like a physical weight. The leaders, Cyrus among them, had spun a web of deceit that threatened to choke the very life from their community. If he didn't expose the truth about the contagion before the week ended, they would face irreversible consequences, and he would become just another lost voice. Determination ignited within him. This was his moment to reclaim his voice and rally the people, but every second counted. We must confront the truth now. Cyrus stepped forward, a sneer curling his lips, the deepening shadows accentuating the lines of authority on his face. "You think you can change anything, Jasper. You're nothing but a murmur lost in the wind." His words hung heavy, underscoring his power. A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of doubt and fear. Could Jasper truly dismantle the fortress of lies built by those in power? The stakes heightened. If he failed, he could lose not only the chance to speak the truth, but also his own sense of self. Jasper clenched his fists, grounding himself against the tide of panic rising within. This contagion didn't just fall from the sky. It's your empty promises and greed that brought it here. His voice rose, trembling but unyielding. The crowd began to stir, uncertainty giving way to a flicker of hope. But Cyrus wasn't done. "And what do you offer, Jasper?" A few words from a nobody. "You risk everything with this charade." The tension thickened, a relentless reminder that every moment wasted brought them closer to doom. Jasper fought to swallow the panic rising in his throat, his breath shallow as he confronted the man who embodied their oppression. Sweat trickled down Jasper's back as the crowd's murmurs swelled, some rallying to his side while others clung to the comfort of ignorance. "Justice will not wait for the timid," he shouted, feeling the surge of voices rise with him. He understood the gravity of the situation. The crowd needed him to rally against their fears. "If we don't act now, our lives will The square of echoes vibrated with a tension that hummed beneath Jasper's skin. Shadows stretched long across the cracked stone plaza, darkening the faces of the crowd gathered before him. They waited, their hearts intertwined with the flickering light of hope he had ignited. Cyrus loomed at the periphery, a smirk etched on his lips, only strengthening Jasper's resolve. This was the precipice where fear clashed with truth. He straightened, inhaling the cool dusk air, grounding himself as he prepared to speak. "Hey, y'all, it's time we take back our story, don't you think?" His voice rang out, steady and clear, cutting through the turmoil within. Cyrus stepped closer, the crowd parting like reluctant waves before a looming storm. Uncertainty danced in some eyes, but Jasper stood firm. "You're swallowing their lies whole. Pathetic," he shouted, his words bursting forth, striking at the core of the gathering. "This contagion, our suffering, it's not a punishment but a consequence of neglect, of power wielded without accountability." He scanned the faces before him, searching for glimmers of courage, a shift from doubt to determination. In that moment he was not just a man, he was a mirror reflecting their unspoken fears and desires. Cyrus's expression darkened, frustration spilling over as he struggled to be heard over Jasper's rising voice. "You can silence me, but you cannot silence the truth." The crowd stirred, a low murmur rising, gathering momentum. Hope swelled within Jasper, a fragile ember igniting as he saw heads nodding, fists clenching. This was not just his fight, it was theirs, a collective pulse thrumming in unison. "Look around you. We are the echoes. Each voice matters." A murmur rippled through the crowd, an electric current crackling in the air. Energy surged as Jasper locked eyes with a woman in the front row, her brow furrowed with concern. They were all here together, and he was not alone. "Stand with me," he cried, his voice rising above the din. "Face the truth, we can bring them down."
The crowd surged forward, energy shifting from doubt to empowerment. They were ready to reclaim their narrative, to wrest control from those who would keep them shackled with fear. As the last echoes of his voice faded, a hush enveloped the square. Jasper stood amidst the thrumming silence, their gazes heavy upon him. Doubt crept in, yet he drew strength from the fire kindling in their eyes. This wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. The air thickened with possibility, change looming ominously. Yet a glance at Cyrus revealed a lingering threat, a reminder that the battle was far from over. In that charged atmosphere, the truth could indeed transform fear into strength became clear, and together they could become the architects of their own fate.
Dusk settled over the square of echoes, the sky streaked with hues of orange and deep violet, casting shadows that danced across the cracked cobblestones. Jasper Caldwell stepped forward, his pulse quickening as he inhaled the earthy scent of roasted tubers, mingling with the briny aroma of skewered fish sizzling at nearby stalls. A few outcasts huddled together at a communal table, sharing a pot of fragrant stew made from gathered roots, their laughter rising above the growing murmur of the crowd. The air buzzed with anticipation, charged with the weight of unspoken fears and broken promises. Tonight he would not be silent any longer. Jasper's gaze fell on a small group of children, their fingers sticky with the syrup of fermented fruits, giggling as they tossed small pieces of bread to one another. Oblivious to the tensions swirling around them, they seemed untouched by the growing storm. He swallowed hard, the taste of mossy tubers still lingering in his mouth, a reminder of the shared meals that had once bound the community together. Now, that bond felt fragile, ready to snap. As he moved closer to the dais where the leaders stood, he spotted Cyrus, a figure of authority with a pale face and lips pressed into a thin line, his condescension palpable. His palms felt clammy as he approached. The crowd shifted, whispering his name, a tide of support swelling behind him. Cyrus cleared his throat, a cold smile twisting his lips as he attempted to dismiss Jasper's concerns. "Jasper, do try to grasp the reality. It's just a myth, nothing but a tale spun by the desperate. You really should know your place." The crowd shuffled, some bowing their heads in respect, but Jasper stood tall, refusing to let Cyrus's words cut him down. He gestured towards the gathered people, the outcasts whose lives hung in the balance. "These folks deserve the straight talk, not the empty promises from the high and mighty. They need to know what's hiding in the dark." His voice rose, cutting through the evening air, igniting sparks of defiance among the crowd, their murmurs swelling into chants that echoed against the stone buildings. The leaders cast anxious glances at each other, but Jasper pressed on, feeling the weight of the moment urging him forward. "You promised us security. You promised us protection from the contagion, yet all we have are your lies." The chant grew louder, voices rising like a wave crashing against a shore. The tension in the air crackled, a superstitious fear of the twilight creeping in as if the spirits of the vanished were watching, their judgment hanging over this moment. "You cannot silence the truth, not anymore." Cyrus stumbled, his facade cracking under the pressure of the crowd. "You dare speak against us?" he hissed, but the power of the people rallied around Jasper. The square of echoes buzzed with tension as dusk settled over the cracked stone plaza, shadows stretching ominously across the cobblestones. At the podium, Jasper Caldwell stood with his heart thudding in his chest, every pulse echoing the urgency of his mission. He was determined to confront the leaders about the contagion ravaging their community, demanding justice before hope slipped away like sand through fingers. Murmurs from the crowd surged around him, a blend of fear and anticipation that heightened his resolve. The clock pressed down on him. Failure would bury the truth beneath a veil of lies. He steeled himself to act. Jasper stepped forward, the microphone cold against his clammy palms. "We've been through hell, folks," his voice cracked, but he pressed on, the desperate energy of the crowd fueling his resolve. "The leaders promised us safety, yet here we stand facing a contagion they refuse to address." He caught sight of Cyrus, lurking at the edge of the crowd, a sneer tugging at his lips, eyes glinting with malice. Doubt wormed its way into his mind. Would the crowd turn against him? He couldn't afford to let fear control him, not now, not when they had only days to save their community from disaster. Cyrus stepped forward, his voice clipped and cold. "What flimsy proof do you have, Caldwell? Your words are just hot air." The audience shifted, whispers swirling like a storm. Jasper's stomach dropped. How could he counter the lies without solid proof? He had only the truth on his side, fragile under the weight of Cyrus's words.
"We deserve the truth, not your empty promises," he shouted, grappling with his composure. Sweat pooled at his temples. Every second felt like a countdown. 3 days left before the contagion became permanent, threatening to swallow every hope he had. He had to sway them, to make them see the reality Cyrus was trying to bury beneath a facade of confidence. Jasper's voice grew stronger, propelled by the collective energy of the crowd. "Look around you, families torn apart, children falling ill. This is the consequence of ignorance and complacency." He pointed at a mother cradling her sick child, the boy's frail body limp against her chest. The sight sent a tremor through him, igniting a fire of determination. The crowd murmured, anger rising against the leaders who had failed them. But then Cyrus struck again, his words dripping with venom. "You think you're a hero, Jasper. You're nothing but a pawn in a game you cannot comprehend." Jasper's resolve faltered for a moment, fear creeping in again. He had to rally them, push past the doubt they needed to unite before it was too late. In that moment, something shifted. The crowd began to chant, voices rising like a wave, drowning out Cyrus's sneer. Jasper's heart soared. He wasn't just a voice, he was their voice. Yet as he looked past the throng, he saw the leaders gathering, their faces hardening with determination.